You're listening to The Jeff Crilley Show on Talk Radio 1190.
Welcome back to The Jeff Crilley Show. My next guest is Tammy DeMirza. She's the author of The Inmate and the Medium, a true story about loss, love, and freedom. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be with you today.
Well, you have a fascinating journey. Tell us how it began.
What happened is, at 11 years old, I invited Jesus into my heart. And from that moment forward, I started getting non-physical communication and wisdom and information that I didn't really know what to do with. And I was called the counselor in junior high and high school. And I didn't know at that point that I was actually giving readings or what people call mediumship abilities were happening in my life. Miracles started occurring. People started being sent to my home. People were being healed of cancer. There were all kinds of crazy things that were going on. There were periods of time when God really wanted to teach me certain concepts or certain information about people. And I remember in my early 20s, he started sending me rape victims, which was really an interesting thing. I was not only getting the information about what had occurred, but also how they needed healing emotionally, how to forgive the people who had done these things to them. I also got very familiar with the energy of what it feels like to be a victim. And so that started this educational thing that God has had me on my entire life of really learning what is it like for people to go through certain events in their lives and what is the best opportunity for healing for them. And so my work is not what you would typically call a psychic or a psychic medium, even though I am those things. It's more along the lines of Elijah and Elijah, where miracles occur and I'm giving interesting things for people to do in order to get them to a place of healing for themselves. God wants to touch everybody individually. This journey is about him touching my life individually and showing me even more teachings. My entire life, Jeff, has been one training cycle after another of we want you to learn about this or this.
Well, tell me about the gentleman that changed your life.
This book is about an inmate named Phil DeMirza, same last name. I ended up marrying this guy in the walls of prison. I met him because I did a reading for his sister, and she told me about him at the end of the reading, and then she called me that afternoon and said, the brother that I spoke to you about, I would like to pay for a reading for him. She said, however, he's got extenuating circumstances. Call me back. When she called us, I said he's in federal prison. That's not an issue. I'm not judgmental. And I ended up doing a phone reading with him because he had been serving a 50-year sentence for trafficking tons and tons of marijuana. And he had gotten arrested at 35. He had served 24 years at that point. I did a reading for him. Everything is written about in this book. So this book is really my memoir, my time with him, of really meeting him, getting to know him, understanding what the spiritual work is for a person to get free in the physical. I assisted him for years by going into the walls of prison, sitting in the visitation room, and doing spiritual work, going through his life, doing a life review, assisting him in understanding what his patterns are, why people had betrayed him, why certain things had occurred in his life, giving him information that I would not typically know. This is what I do as what people perceive as a medium. I call it an intercessor. I'm that person that bridges the gap between what you think you know, what you think you're doing, and what God knows is really going to ultimately help you to get free. So the journey is about me becoming homeless. He introduced me to a guy that was very much like Bernie Madoff. He stole everything I had. And I learned to sit at the feet of the Good Shepherd and just let him show me how I was going to eat. He was asking me to detach from the world economic system, to learn how to live on faith. I never once had to live or sleep in my car. He would move me from place to place. I would have no idea how the rent was going to be paid or where I was going to live. I ended up living in the home of the patent attorney that I ended up getting a wheelchair that Phil had designed and invented. He had prayed and asked God for it. It's extraordinary. He is now marketing that wheelchair now that He got out of prison years earlier than he was supposed to. So it's a really wild journey of what the spiritual journey is really like, to get in front of God and to really stop the belief of separation between us and him, and asking for those individual days of, this is what we do, this is how we do it, constantly sitting before his feet and saying, how do we do this for Phil?
Wow, that's powerful. And you mentioned that he's now your husband. That's got to be a fascinating story, too. When did you know that you were in love with him?
I fell in love with him because of the spiritual books that he had read. And for the first time in my life, I felt some kind of commonality between him and me. I felt someone could speak my language. We ended up not being together at the end of this story, which is another thing that is fascinating that I've learned, is that you have a contract with people to go through certain things. And once that contract is finished, the benefits of that relationship and what I learned and what he learned, we both love each other very much. We both respect each other's journeys. We have no ill feelings or harm toward each other. We only lived together for a year after he got out of prison, and in that time, we actually separated twice. He is on his own journey, and I'm on mine. And we both are very encouraging of each other and what we have going on. He lives in Sarasota, Florida, and I live in Chattanooga, Tennessee with my daughter, son-in-law, and my grandson.
Well, you seem very much at peace. When you and I were visiting before the show, I got a lot of tranquility coming off of you. Is that energy comes from above? That
comes from overcoming so many amazing obstacles. Phil and I used to laugh and say that God was going to give me everything possible to man to overcome, so that I can sit and look eye level with somebody and say, hey, if I can do it, who is one of the most insecure people in the world, if I could overcome these obstacles, if I could overcome poverty, not having anything left, just the connection between me and Source, me and God, then I could actually teach this. I believe that's what spiritual leaders end up doing. You hear all of these extraordinary stories that us as leaders, teachers, mentors, we are the students. We're the ones that are going through it.
As your journey as a medium, do your skills get stronger and more keen over time?
You experience more things, and I think that was the thing that drew me to Phil, because he had read the spiritual books. He had not really done the spiritual work, but he had read the spiritual books, so he had this superficial information. And very often I would go to him and say, I don't know what happened to me, but I was hovering above this person, or I was in their house for a few moments, or I saw what happened when they were 5 years old. And he would go, oh, that's remote viewing. And I said, there's a name for it. I'm not going crazy. So I think that peacefulness of going to him and saying, I experienced this during a session, yes. And the reason it does, Jeff, is because really every single one of us are just like me. I'm really not an anomaly. Every single one of us have this capacity to do this work, to be able to communicate, to be able to have things transparent, to be able to go back into the past and know what happened to someone.
Do you just a strange question, but do you ever want to turn it off? I mean, when you're
I do.
When you're in a cocktail party, you're probably getting all kinds of messages.
I don't, because I went through a period of time. I know Sylvia Brown said that she could not go to sleep, and I was like, why haven't you learned to turn it off? You mature in it, and I don't allow it to be turned on in personal relationships, or even like if I meet you, I'm not reading you. If I wanted to, I could, but I really just allow God to give me the information that he knows I need at any given moment. And the journey with Phil and me falling in love with him and getting married on the walls of prison underneath the guards' noses, and they didn't know what we were doing. The whole thing is just, it's a beautiful, amazing part of the story.
It sounds like a movie.
It does sound like a movie. We've actually had people talking about doing that. Yeah.
What actress would portray you?
I know who would portray my mother, Susan Sarandon. I think I want Angelina Jolie.
Hey, there you go.
And Brad Pitt can play Phil. Wouldn't that be fun?
That's wonderful. What do you hope readers get out of the book?
I hope that they understand by reading the book what their individual journey is with God, and that God cares as much about them as he does me in my life. It's just a visual, a way to, I really take people into the walls of prison and tell them what it's like to encounter guards that have malevolent spirits about them, that really believe in punishment. It's a way to look at non-judgmental things that we typically would judge in this life and say, you're wrong, you're right. There is no right or wrong. There is no real looking at life from that perspective for me. There is just acceptance and love and the wisdom in looking at people as a witness, but also paying attention to what is your personal journey. Right. What is it that God is, reaching your heart, trying to say, let's do this, let's go here. I'm just more adept at hearing the voice, at knowing, well, can we move you? Can we do this with you? Can we do that with you? Not knowing where God is going to take me, Jeff, but knowing that I can trust his heart, even if I can't see his hand, even if I can't trace his plans, I can trust his heart and just doing it.
What's the greatest compliment you've received from a reader of your book?
Oh, I'll start crying. People saying that it gives them the courage to walk through the fire, to overcome things. It is amazing to know that people are sitting in their homes reading my book, reading my story, knowing that my sharing might change one person's mind, makes it worth the writing of the book. If just one gets some kind of truth, gets some kind of understanding of who God really is, and that love that cannot be measured, that makes it worth everything to me.
Wow. Tammy, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing your heart. How do people get a hold of the book?
They can buy it on Amazon.com. They can go to Barnes & Noble. It's on every single venue. There's Kindle versions. I will give away 2 of those if you will get in touch with me and email me from some of your listeners. I will give away 2 of the audiobooks. It's not me. It's actually Kindle versions. I'm going to do an audio version because everybody says it's got to be my voice. I also have a website called www.Tammy DeMirza, that's TammyDemirza.com, and they can purchase an autograph copy. Right now I'm shipping it for free with my autograph. So if you go to Amazon, you're not going to get an autograph unless you ship me the book. If you go to my website for a period of time, I will allow free shipping just for people buying on my website.
Wow, that's beautiful. You've been an amazing guest.
Thank you so much.
Safe journey home.
Thank you.
Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, a new restaurant is about to open at Legacy West, and it's going to have DFW foodies going haywire. That story is just ahead on the Jeff Crilley Show.
More of the Jeff Crilley Show coming up.